Good Monday morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for this Monday, February 29th. And as we normally do, we start off with a look at precipitation over the past week. On the left-hand side is the observed precipitation. You can see most of our area just covered either with nothing over southern Utah or just a light shade of blue, so just less than 1/4 of an inch, which is quite light for this time of year. And actually on the right-hand side, you can see how much that is actually well below normal for this seasonal time period. And looking at the infrared satellite imagery with upper level maps superimposed, over Utah we do have a little trough of low pressure. It's currently moving across. You can see a bit of enhanced cloud cover through here. There is a brief ridge of high pressure building in just behind it, but not too strong, before another Pacific storm system behind it starts to move onshore. So starting to see a bit more in the way of faster moving weather systems moving on through, not getting that big high pressure dominating over extended periods of time like we had not so long ago. So looking at this afternoon, Monday afternoon, overall dispersion with the ventilation index, areas in white indicate the best overall dispersion, so best over Utah, far northern Arizona, all through Idaho. A bit worse air quality overall and transport as we go into western portions of Nevada, where we saw that high pressure system building on in. If we look at the individual components, on the left-hand side we have transport winds or horizontal transport, best across our eastern areas, a bit of stagnation across parts of Nevada, some really good winds coming in across parts of the higher terrain of Idaho and along the Wasatch and Uintas. These oranges are transport winds somewhere in excess of 25 miles an hour. On the right-hand side, overall vertical mixing, pretty good in most areas, especially eastern areas. Decreases a bit across the west as you go towards Nevada. Now if we look at Tuesday afternoon, on the left-hand side, the upper level map shows a bit of a weak high pressure arc starting to build in over us, but it's starting to flatten out because we have another storm system pushing on in into the Pacific Northwest. On the right-hand side, you can see actually across Utah and eastern areas, instead of having that white, we have more yellow and red. Those are overall worse dispersion ratings. Starts to improve a little bit as you head towards the California-Nevada border. Breaking down the individual components of those, on the left-hand side, we do start seeing transport winds picking up across Nevada, so the horizontal transport should be pretty good. The winds, however, do weaken a bit across Utah compared to today. Vertical mixing, starting to see a bit more in that purplish color. That's due to the higher pressure overhead for a brief period of time, so a bit less vertical mixing in some of these areas for tomorrow. Looking at Wednesday afternoon, on the left-hand side, the upper level map does show a ridge of high pressure building in across the Great Basin. However, somewhat stronger upper level of winds, especially across Utah, so that could help transport. And there's another storm system off the coast that will be approaching, which should bring more wind and better mixing to much of the west over the next several days. On the right-hand side, overall dispersion starts improving over Utah, probably because of the upper level winds. There'll be less wind across Nevada, and because the overall region is under high pressure, southern half of Nevada is where we expect the worst overall dispersion. If we want to break it down and look at the individual components on the left-hand side, again, winds are fairly light across southern Nevada, hence the lower overall ventilation. You can see the winds really pick up again across the Wasatch up into the mountains of Wyoming, a good portion of the higher terrain of southern and central Idaho. So that's that horizontal transport that really gives us that better overall ventilation or dispersion across our eastern areas. And even looking at the vertical mixing heights, you see more yellows and oranges, or higher overall mixing over Utah, worse as you head across Nevada. Now specifically for Utah, looking at the clearing index produced by the National Weather Service locally in Salt Lake City, we see some really high numbers, really good ventilation or clearing or dispersion overall, combining both horizontal and transport mixing. It looks like Monday and Wednesday will be our best days. Tuesday will be the questionable day as the high pressure temporarily puts a limit on some of our overall dispersion. If we want to look at precipitation during this time, we stay mostly dry except for the mountains of Idaho, which in this second shade of green is basically 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of precipitation. Otherwise, most of the precipitation confined further off to our north and west. Looking further down the road, by Saturday afternoon, we have high pressure briefly billing in across parts of the area. Looks like the overall dispersion will be worst across Nevada, not so bad across Utah. There'll still be more horizontal transport due to stronger winds across much of Utah and Idaho as well. So keep that in mind. Taking a bit further down the road there towards Sunday, that high pressure shifts to our east. We start getting a trough of low pressure approaching. And if we look to the right, temporarily over Utah, we see a decrease in overall ventilation as that high pressure moves overhead, but we see improving conditions across parts of Nevada. We step it up to next Monday on the left-hand side, a deep trough of low pressure pushing into California and some of that moisture and instability into the Great Basin. And look at that area of white as our both vertical and horizontal ventilation really improves. It'll be a good burn day if you can stay dry with increasing moisture. Then the last day, Tuesday, we see that trough of low pressure right over Las Vegas, basically. A weak high pressure ridge nosing into far northwestern Nevada, otherwise cloud cover and unstable conditions everywhere else. And you notice on the right-hand side that across Nevada, we start to see a little bit of localized of a decrease in overall ventilation, still remaining good across a good portion of Utah, northern Arizona, far southern Nevada, as well. So no real areas of stagnation. If we look at precipitation totals from Thursday morning through Saturday morning, not much over us. Precipitation stays to our north and west. However, if we go further down the road, as we go into Saturday morning into next Monday morning, that's when that last bigger Pacific storm moves through, and we see much more widespread coverage of what I would call moderate precipitation, around a ½ inch in a lot of these areas across parts of Utah and Nevada, locally over an inch across some of the mountains of central and southern Idaho. And then looking way down the road, as we go to the 8 to 14 day official NOAA outlook, we do see a major change in the weather pattern. Still temperature-wise, no really cold air, but you can see a little pocket of coolness across parts of the Great Basin. But the real big story is on the right-hand side. It looks like the El Nino storm track, which has been blocked off for the past 6 or 7 weeks, will finally push on through. We could see a prolonged stormy period beginning sometime in early March and continuing for quite some time. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. This concludes our briefing. Have a safe day. Our next briefing will be this coming Wednesday.